Generals die in bed. Chapter 9. Over the Top. Part 2. The rain stops. It is quiet. We open our haversacks and start to eat. At noon, they begin to shell our line. The fire is weak. It lasts about 10 minutes. Suddenly it stops. Counterattack! We put the Lewis gun on the parapet. Broadbent works it while Anderson stands by feeding him ammunition. The Germans run slowly across the muddy field towards us. There are swarms of them. I fire my rifle point blank into the slow-moving ranks. They keep coming. To my right, the Lewis gun leaps and tugs as though it were a living thing. When they are about 50 yards from us, they break and run back to their lines again. We continue to fire until we cannot see them any longer. It is quiet, save for the swishing sound of the rain, which has started again. In front of our lines, we can hear their wounded calling for help. They moan and howl. We settle down to rest. Suddenly, machine gun fire opens up. We jump to the parapets. They are coming again. They advance in waves, in close formation. We stand on the firing step and shoot into the closely packed ranks. Every shot tells. My rifle is hot. On all sides of us, machine guns hammer at the attacking ranks. They are insane, it seems. We cannot miss them. On and on they come. Above the clatter of the Lewis guns, I can hear snatches of song. They are singing. They are close to us. I fire carefully. They are close enough to throw grenades. I see their ranks waver for a moment, and then they start to run slowly towards us. Our line is a line of flame. Every gun is in action. The singing is quite distinct now. I can see faces clearly. Each burst of Broadbent's gun cuts a swath in the front ranks of the attacking troops. They are close to our trenches. Their singing has become a shriek, which we hear above the hammering of our rifles and guns. I am filled with a frenzied hatred for these men. They want to kill me, but I will stay here and shoot at them until I am either shot or stabbed down. I grit my teeth. We are snarling, savage beasts. Their dead and wounded are piled up about 4 deep. They climb over them as they advance. Suddenly they break and retreat. We have repulsed them again. Their wounded crawl towards our trenches. We shoot at them. The shrieking and howling out in front of us sounds like a madhouse in turmoil. We sink down to the bottom of our trenches exhausted. It is quiet once more. Out in front, the wounded men still howl. One of them crawls into our trench and falls near us. Half of his face is shot away. His breath smells of ether. No wonder they attack like madmen. Fry has a flesh wound in his right arm. We dress the wound. It is not serious, and we advise him to go back as soon as it is dark. Out in front, the cries of the wounded are worse than ever. We look at each other with drawn, frightened faces. The afternoon wears on. We busy ourselves with repairing the trench. We dig it deeper and sandbag our parapets. Behind the German lines, we hear them preparing for another attack. We hear voices, commands. It is nearly dusk. They begin to shell our trench. They have not got the correct range, and the shell falls short in no man's land. The shells leap up among the bodies of the wounded and dead. The lashing of the bombardment starts them shrieking again. It hurls torn limbs and entrails into our trench. We are lost. Our ammunition is short. Fry comes into our bay. His arm is stiff. He cannot move it. We talk of retreating. We work out a plan for falling back. Anderson begins to pray in a subdued, scared voice. O Lord, look down upon me. Search me out in thine infinite pity. Broadbent turns on him in disgust. For the Lord's sake, Anderson, don't tell God where you are, or we'll all get killed. Stop whining. The shells come closer and closer. We decide to fall back if the coming counterattack threatens to be successful. The fire lifts. We stand to. We place the Lewis gun on the parapet and begin to sweep the field. Anderson is working the gun. Broadbent supplies him with freshly filled pans of ammunition. Across the field, we see them climbing out of their trenches. At last, our artillery comes to life. Overhead shrapnel hisses over our heads and cracks to fragments in the face of the attacking Germans. Still they come. The field is full of them. We see their officers out in front of them. Bullets whiz past our heads and smack against the parados in the rear. The firing grows fiercer. They are about 100 yards from us. At a given moment they fling themselves down. In that moment their artillery begins to hammer at our trench. They have the range now. The shells scream and whistle and crash into the trenches, on the parapets, behind us, on all sides of us. We cower down. We cannot face the fire. The trench begins to cave in. Sandbags are blown into the air. The trench is nearly flattened. Our shelling lifts and passes to the rear. Out in front we hear a maddened howl. They are coming. We look behind us. They have laid down a barrage to cut us off. We are doomed. Anderson jumps from his gun and lies groveling in the bottom of the shallow trench. I tell Renaud to keep firing his rifle from the corner of the bay. Broadbent takes the gun, and I stand by, feeding him with what ammunition we have left. They are close to us now. They are hurling hand grenades. Broadbent sweeps his gun, but still they come. The field in front is smothered with gray smoke. I hear a long, drawn-out hiss. Sss. I look to my right from where the sound comes. A stream of flame is shooting into the trench. Flammenwerfer! Flamethrowers! In the front rank of the attackers, a man is carrying a square tank strapped to his back. A jet of flame comes from a nozzle which he holds in his hand. There is an odor of chemicals. Broadbent shrieks in my ear, "Get that bastard with the flame!" I take my rifle and start to fire. Broadbent sweeps the gun in the direction of the flamethrower also. Anderson looks nervously to the rear. "Grenades!" I shout to him. He starts to hurl bombs into the ranks of the storm troops. Odor of burning flesh. It does not smell unpleasant. I hear a shriek to my right, but I cannot turn to see who it is. We continue to fire towards the flamethrower. Broadbent puts a fresh pan on the gun. He pulls the trigger. The gun spurts flame. He sprays the flamethrower. A bullet strikes the tank on his back. There is a hissing explosion. The man disappears in a cloud of flame and smoke. To my right, the shrieking becomes louder. It is Renaud. He has been hit by the flamethrower. Flame sputters on his clothing. Out of one of his eyes, tongues of blue flame flicker. His shrieks are unbearable. He throws himself into the bottom of the trench and rolls around trying to extinguish the fire. Out of the hissing... As I look at him, his clothing bursts into a sheet of flame. Out of the hissing ball of fire, we still hear him screaming. Broadbent looks at me, and then draws his revolver and fires 3 shots into the flaming head of the recruit. The advance is held up for a while. The attackers are lying down, taking advantage of whatever cover they can find. They are firing at us with machine guns. We decide to retreat. I motion to Fry to climb up over the parados. At that moment, Clark crawls into the bay. He motions to Fry, who is about to crawl over the top of the trench, to come down. Fry points to his arm. "Get the hell down here!" Clark shouts. Fry does not obey, but still points to his arm. Clark draws his revolver. Broadbent steps up to intervene. Clark turns. Fry reaches into his holster with his left hand. He fires at the officer's back. Clark sags to the bottom of the trench with a look of wonder in his face. It is nearly dark. Out in front, the firing increases. Broadbent goes to the gun and throws a last pan on it. He sweeps across the field. We hop up over the parados and start to run to the rear. The shells burst all around us. We are ankle-deep in mud. On all sides of us, men are running back. Behind us, we hear the Germans shriek as they make their final rush for the abandoned trench. We run slowly. The rain starts to drizzle again. We pass the cadavers of artillery horses. A shower of shells explodes in front of us. We are near the woods again. There we will find shelter from the sledgehammer strokes of the bombardment. Fry and Anderson run in front, Broadbent and I to the rear. Behind us, the enemy is sweeping at us with his machine guns. With our remaining energy, we make a spurt towards the stumps of trees behind which we will find shelter. A shell lands in front of us. Fry's legs, from the knees down, are torn from under him. He runs a few paces on his gushing stumps and collapses. As I pass him, he entwines my legs with his hands. "Save me," he screams into my face. "Don't leave me here alone." I shake him off and run towards the woods with Broadbent. We run past the mutilated trees and at last find ourselves near our old trench again. An officer calls us into the bay. Other men of our company are there. Broadbent is detailed for sentry duty. I crawl into a dugout and go to sleep. The sector is a sea of mud. From the rear they have built a duckboard road, strips of wood nailed together and laid across a roadway of sandbags. Down one of these roads, what is left of the battalion dribbles down towards the rear. We pass corpses stuck in the mud, walking wounded who became dizzy and fell into the thin black ooze and were drowned. At last we reach a cobblestone road. It feels good to have something solid under one's feet. We find a refreshment dugout and pile in for cocoa and bread and butter. In the light of the oil lamp we look haggard and worn. Our faces are black with the mud through which the stubble of beards protrudes. We are a ghastly-looking crew. Our officer, a lieutenant from Company D, is in charge of us. He calls the roll. Broadbent and I are the only survivors of our section. Anderson got lost somewhere in the woods. We climb into waiting lorries outside of the shelter. Gears grind. We begin our ride back to rest.